Greetings. Recently there was a talk about fasting in one of the comment sections of a video, and in general I've wanted to make a video about fasting as well as some related metabolic issues for quite some time. And I think even now, after the relative popularity of something such as intermittent fasting, there's some confusion and just a general aversion to the idea of fasting. After all, not eating, effectively starving, seems like a bad idea on face value. But in recent years, there have been several studies, many studies in fact, covering the topic. And I want to talk about that and the consequences or the results. And of course, I'd also like to talk about meal frequency and certain pervasive ideas, misinformed ideas you'll find, say, throughout the fitness community, and just ideas that have sort of been carried along throughout the years. So before I actually get to the fasting and the benefits of fasting, let's talk about one of the most pervasive myths you'll hear when it comes to either weight loss, weight control, gaining mass, etc. One of them is that for optimal whatever, be it putting on muscle mass, losing fat, etc., you need to eat many small meals a day. Often it's recommended 6 to 7. This has been around for ages, this idea. The idea is that you're keeping your metabolism humming, going, you're regulating your blood sugar levels. But unfortunately, this belongs to the realm of bro science. I will be posting links to everything I talk about in the low bar as usual. But in spite of what people believe or have believed, there's actually no science. There's no science to support this. In fact, science tells us quite the opposite. Science does not tell us, in some cases, quite the opposite. Or, alternatively, many studies have shown, as I'll read off soon, that eating several frequent meals as opposed to just 2 big ones a day makes no difference whatsoever when it comes to weight loss. And there are also disadvantages to eating many frequent meals a day as compared to just 1 or 2. For example, I'll be posting links to this. A study from the University of Ottawa found that on a low-calorie diet, there was no weight loss advantage to splitting calories among 6 meals rather than 3. A second study found that switching from 3 daily meals to 6 did not boost calorie burning or fat loss. In fact, the researchers concluded eating 6 meals a day actually made people want to eat more. Now, that's just one example of many. There's other information out there that suggests that instead of regulating blood sugar levels, eating frequent meals tends to keep them elevated, which would make sense. Every time you eat some sort of meal, even if it's a very low carbohydrate meal, you're forcing your pancreas to create insulin. And if you're doing this constantly, well, it kind of makes sense that blood sugar levels can go up, and insulin has to keep the blood sugar levels down, and it's just a big mess. So where the myth of you have to eat all these meals all the time came from, I don't really know. Ultimately, it's been around for what seems decades, and I used to follow it like it were the Bible. But after reading a lot and experimenting, you see it's just a bunch of bullshit. There's nothing behind it. Unfortunately, even people who are well versed in science tend to follow this. I've heard people getting PhDs in biochemistry believe that eating many meals a day boosts your metabolism and optimizes it. Now, it's very strange, but there's actually, of course, no science behind it. But the main focus of this video is fasting, and it's related to this because, as if you're into fitness or weightlifting or similar sports, you hear the word catabolic, and catabolic is, of course, a bad thing. Nobody wants to go, quote-unquote, catabolic, and by depriving your body of food, of course, well, that's bad. But recently, there has been a trend in intermittent fasting. When I'm on track, when I'm living my life and eating the way I normally would be inclined to eat or choose to eat in a preferential way, I usually engage in intermittent fasting. Not only that, every couple of weeks I'll go an entire day or even several days without eating anything. Now, there are reasons for this, and recent studies have been pretty convincing as to the benefits of fasting. So I'm going to read off some of the results. Once again, this will all be in the low bar. Some of the benefits of fasting, and then offer some ideas, some theories as to why this occurs. So here's one article that I will be posting. In the first evidence of a natural intervention triggering stem cell-based regeneration of an organ or system, a study in the June 5 issue of stem cell shows that cycles of prolonged fasting not only protect against immune system damage, a major side effect of chemotherapy, but also induce immune system regeneration, shifting stem cells from a dormant state to a state of self-renewal. In both mice and a phase 1 human clinical trial involving patients receiving chemotherapy, long periods of not eating significantly lowered white blood cell counts in mice counting cycles, then flipped a regenerative switch, changing the signaling pathways for hematopoietic stem cells, which are responsible for the generation of blood and immune systems, the research showed. The study has major implications for healthier aging, in which immune system decline contributes to increased susceptibility to disease as people age. By outlining how prolonged fasting cycles, periods of no food for 2 to 4 days at a time over the course of 6 months, kill older and damaged immune cells and generate new ones, the research also has implications for chemotherapy tolerance and for those with a wide range of immune system deficiencies, including autoimmunity disorders. And some more information specifically with respects to intermittent fasting, some of the benefits: normalizing your insulin and leptin sensitivity, which is a key for optimal health, improving biomarkers of disease, normalizing ghrelin levels, also known as the hunger hormone, reducing inflammation and lessening free radical damage, lowering triglyceride levels, and preserving memory function and learning. So there have been tons of studies by now done on mice, monkeys, and indeed now humans, showing that fasting to differing degrees, and we can talk about the degrees, is actually beneficial. One thing that overwhelmingly seems clear after many studies that have been conducted is that fasting promotes different kinds of cellular regeneration, particularly with respects to white blood cells, but also other cells. Cellular regeneration, of course, has strong implications with respects to aging once again. And they have done experiments on mice where one group of mice was fed a diet that was a calorically reduced diet, a caloric deficit of about 30%, another group a normal diet, and the ones with the deficit lived longer and came down with fewer diseases than the other group. They haven't yet obviously done this on humans, but I think the implications are pretty strong in this regard. So there are many, many different benefits. I want to talk about why this might be at the end of the video. And of course, there are different degrees of fasting. Intermittent fasting is a form of fasting where you consume all of your calories in one day in a certain interval, in a certain cluster of time, and after that, you don't eat anything else. Normally, if I'm running an optimal and I'm on track, I tend to eat one very, very large meal. I don't call it breakfast, but in the morning. For example, today I had 6 fried eggs, several strips of bacon, about 75 grams of Brazil nuts, and some flax seeds, and that was my meal for the day, pretty much, and I haven't eaten anything since. I did have a bit of coffee with some cream in it. I try to avoid dairy products, or at least in excess. And I haven't eaten since. That was in the morning around 10 o'clock, 9:30, and that's it. And I'm still full. I still have a feeling of being sated after that, and it usually lasts well into the evening, that feeling of being sated. Of course, there are at the moment I'm ketogenic, so I'm trying to stick to that. But obviously, it doesn't have to be exclusively ketogenic. You can do intermittent fasting with whatever foods you want. The point is that you consume certain foods, your foods that you want to eat at a certain point in time. It could be 2 medium meals as opposed to one very large one, and then spread out among between 4 hours and the rest of the day you're fasting. That recommended generally is a 16-hour period of fasting. There are a lot of reasons for this, and I'll talk about proper fasting, where you don't eat anything in a bit. But concerning intermittent fasting, you need that long stretch of time so your body basically adjusts and starts doing all the positive things that it can do when it's in a semi-fasted state. For example, HGH levels go up, that is human growth hormone. Insulin levels go down, because you're not consuming food, and so the pancreas doesn't need to be spitting out insulin to control blood sugar levels. Leptin levels improve, and it's been suggested as well, or at least implied, due to some of these studies, that you'll probably experience some level of cellular benefit and strengthening of the immune system, although that's not definitive with regards to intermittent fasting, but it is definitive with regards to proper fasting. And of course, contrary to a lot of popular belief, bro science, you don't automatically go catabolic. There's this big fear, at least in fitness and bodybuilding communities, that if you don't eat every 3 hours in a protein-rich meal, your body's going to go catabolic. Now, unfortunately, once again, this is bro science. It's not supported by the actual science out there. And there have been several studies showing that you don't actually go quote-unquote catabolic, at least in the sense that people believe, till well after 24 hours of not eating anything. So if you eat 1 or 2 big meals a day and don't eat anything, you're going to be absolutely fine. You don't go catabolic. And the most important thing you can do is just test this out. There are a lot of people who are afraid to test things out. I've tested all kinds of nutritional methods and different ways of eating out just to see what it's like, and most of them have been disagreeable. Some have been more agreeable. But, test it out. See if you go catabolic. When I was much younger and much more into fitness, I used to obsess about this, trying to get a protein-rich meal in every 3 hours. It was like the Bible almost. You obey the word of God. But there's no evidence to support this, and there's no science. Just as there's not much science to support, you need a certain amount of protein per your body weight. Of course, a lot of this is really individual. But with regards to proper fasting, as opposed to intermittent fasting, that you're going to go at least an entire day without eating anything. And those are what the studies show us. It's actually beneficial to your body. It promotes cellular regeneration and gives you a host of other benefits. That can be kind of tricky. Obviously, going more than 1 day will slowly but surely put you in a catabolic state. But let's think about our ancestry. The body obviously had to evolve due to selection pressures to be pretty tough. It's unlikely, if you think about this, that the body's just going to go catabolic and just totally fall apart if you don't eat for a day or two. You should try it out. Nothing happens, really. You might lose a little bit of strength if you're going to the gym on the day where you resume eating and what have you, but it's almost negligible. And the reality is that it's beneficial, and there are many reasons for this. One of the primary ideas put forth for why fasting seems to promote cellular regeneration is related to the aging process, and specifically to reproduction. You see, all organisms are around to reproduce. I mean, that is the quote-unquote purpose of being an organism, whether you're a human, a mouse, a bacterium, whatever. Now, generally speaking, the body is functioning and it preserves itself for the purposes of surviving long enough in order to reproduce, replicate genes. The idea put forth, a very common idea put forth as to why fasting promotes these cellular benefits, regeneration, and possibly anti-aging, is that when you're fasting, you're sort of entering into an emergency state. You no longer have nutrition. The body needs to possibly tap into fat reserves, even protein reserves for the process called gluconeogenesis, where it actually has to break down body muscle in order to get access to glucose, which is taken from branched-chain amino acids. I don't want to talk too much about that, but so in any event, you have these processes going on. But when you're in an emergency state and you don't have access to food, the body needs to react in a certain way. But the reason why it seems to react in a positive way over the long term, promoting cellular regeneration and longevity, is that the body, it's obviously not thinking, but I'll use this in air quotes, as an abstract. The body thinks, shit, we don't really have any food right now. We need to do our best to preserve all the mechanisms to keep the body alive so we can reproduce later. And so what's going on then is the body enters into an emergency state of cellular repair and long-term anti-aging in order to extend the duration of the body's ability to exist, so in order to procreate at a later date. And obviously, this can have benefits if you do this over a prolonged period of time, as opposed to just once. In fact, that's what seems to be the recommendation. Over a prolonged period of time, you will have overall better health. You will probably not age as quickly, and you might live, it seems implied, at least heavily correlated, that you will probably live longer and a healthier life due to this. Now, this goes against all common wisdom, but that's what the science tells us. They've done enough experiments by now, and they've seen this. You don't need a million meals a day. You don't need to constantly be eating. And in fact, it's actually more beneficial to eat one large or two large meals a day and just leave it at that and get on with your stuff. And occasionally, because it's not reasonable to always just completely be fasting, it's beneficial to just fast for a day or two, or even up to 4 days. Really, in my experience, I've only made it to, in my experience, ever to the 5-day mark because it was just too much. Going beyond 4 days, I think, is a bit pointless. Because then you're really entering into what would be considered a catabolic state. You're going to have the gluconeogenesis going. You're going to lose a lot of strength. It's going to be hard to do things in general. But a day or two is really nice. I mean, a day or two of complete fasting per month, combined with intermittent fasting, I think can bring a lot of health benefits. It'll make you feel better, depending on what sort of diet you have. But that's not really relevant because we're talking about periods of time when you eat as opposed to macronutrient composition. And yeah, it can be really beneficial. In fact, this Sunday I plan on doing a complete fast, just as an example. So yeah, this is a good thing. People should probably engage in it more often. But all around us, we're surrounded by access to food. This didn't exist in the past, and I think that's one of the reasons why the body's so resilient and even promotes cellular regeneration when you fast. I mean, we have to imagine that. We know that prehistoric hunting expeditions weren't always successful. The proverbial bacon was not always brought home to be eaten, and sometimes people had to go without eating. As opposed to now, you run down the supermarket and you see some cheap processed ham for $1.50 or however much it might cost, and then you just go eat it, and there you have it. It's quite a different world we live in, and we always have to bear in mind that physiologically speaking, we are the same human beings as 50,000 years ago, and the rules that applied to us 50,000 years ago are the same as they apply to us today. And this is one of the reasons. There are other reasons why you see an obesity epidemic, etc., in the West. There just is too much food around, and it goes against our nature to think not eating. After all, we're inclined to eat. Of course, when you're fasting, in particular, for an entire day, you're going to feel hungry. That's normal. But we should bear in mind the long-term benefits as well as the immediate benefits. Some of the immediate benefits are just down to numbers. Let's say you've been having a week of binge eating. A really good way of breaking that to give yourself a bit of hope, if you will, I don't like the word, but is to go an entire day without fasting. At the end of the day, or more specifically at the end of the week, of course, the greatest impact calories have on you is the weekly balance of calories. So if you go an entire day without eating, you might be able to balance out some of the caloric damage or caloric excess of previous days. And that's just a really simple math strategic tool that you could be using in order to help balance out your diet. Maybe on one day you just want to eat a shit ton of food, and you say, okay, I'll make a compromise. I'm going to eat, my 4,000 calories of food today. I'm going to eat cake. I'm going to eat all kinds of shit. But tomorrow I'm going to just fast entirely. And that can balance things out. In addition to all the other benefits, the cellular benefits, the anti-aging benefits, etc. So we really, I think, as a society, as a civilization, need to get past the idea of the need to constantly eat. And of course, this all comes with a disclaimer that metabolically, we're all very individual. After a lot of experimentation, I can't honestly say one specific form of diet and the kind of food is better than the other, because it's going to come down to you as an individual. I'm someone that actually does quite well with ketogenic. I don't get, blackouts, headaches, or anything like that. I'm fine pretty much from day one. But there are other people who don't really deal very well with ketogenic diet forms or even low carb diet forms. There are people who really genuinely, in order to feel good, it seems at least, need to be on at least medium carb forms of nutrition. That's not me. I don't really need any carbs to be okay. But there are other people who do. And I've seen this. It's proof is in the pudding. I have a friend who experiments a lot with different nutrition forms, and he did several times the ketogenic stuff, 3-4 months, and he just, he could do it, but he didn't really feel good doing it. So it's going to come back down to the individual, what you feel comfortable with, what you like eating, etc. For me, as someone who has basically a sugar addiction, going ketogenic for long periods of time is really helpful just to get that away, because you find that your addiction to sugar lessens as time goes on, and you stick with it using fats and what have you, and ketones as a primary source of energy. But it is very individual. But I think obviously in some cases, if you're one of these people who's a hard gainer, who has to fight every day to gain every little gram of muscle in say the gym situation, yeah, fasting might be suboptimal to your goals because you need tons of calories. I'm the opposite. I mean, I probably could survive in the wilderness for weeks on end without eating because my body is very efficient at storing fat if it needs to, and I'm not really bothered by not eating that much. Different strokes, different folks. But this video, of course, was more about the general benefits of fasting, specifically the ones that have been documented by science. It's not harmful. It's actually beneficial. And yeah, sometimes it's a pain in the ass. I find when I'm fasting, I'm proper fasting, not intermittent fasting, I'm not particularly good at mental tasks, but I'm okay with physical tasks. It's all going to be individual. But I think we could all benefit if we engage more frequently in at least intermittent fasting and occasional fast, maybe once a month. Don't eat anything for an entire day. Choose a day where you don't have anything to do, where you can just laze about, play video games, whatever. Test it out, see what it's like, see how it feels. You have to test these things out. You have to experiment. That's true of everything, but that's particularly true of nutrition, because if we don't do this, then we're never gonna know what it's like, number one, and we'll just keep on second guessing stuff. So yeah, try it out, but the benefits are definitely there. They've been well documented, and yeah, I hope this was informative. I hope people have a better idea, or at least an overview of how it all works. And I will see you guys soon. I plan on the weekend, as I said, hopefully, Zeus willing, interviewing Teal Deer, and many more things to come. As always, thanks for watching, and may your chosen God watch over you. Bye-bye.